Hello and welcome back to the Editorial. I'm Rory, hosting today instead of Jack while he's away. But as always, joined by TLDR's Editor-in-Chief, Zach Michaelis. For those who don't know, this is the podcast where we talk about things we've got wrong, defend ourselves, admit defeat sometimes, and also sort of relatively new feature. We do a little Q&A at the end if there's not too many mistakes to talk about. So I think we'll get to that.
Also worth saying that you are the substitute editor-in-chief. When I'm away, Rory's editor-in-chief. So, again, I think we said this last time, there's going to be an excess of editorial expertise. And you're very welcome, unlike Jack, to butt in at any point.
Excellent. Well, hopefully we don't have too much to talk about. But
no,
I think it has been 2 weeks since the last one. So.
Yeah, 2 weeks and a little bit because we're recording this on Tuesday. There's basically one video I think that is worth talking about in that like it was sufficiently negatively received such that it merits a bit of discussion. But aside from that, there are only a handful of errors. Oddly, a couple of them come on UK, which is normally pretty error-free. But the first is that on the why is Starmer So Unpopular, there's a little typo on one of the graphs. There's a 2010 when it was talking about 2019. Classic. They are close to each other.
Right next door.
And then there's something we've just been talking about. It turns out we also mentioned in the video about Badenoch potentially being replaced as Tory leader. We say that under the current Tory leadership contest rules, 15% of MPs need to send a letter of no confidence into, or Conservative MPs, Conservative backbenchers need to send a letter of no confidence into the 1922 committee, and that triggers a leadership election. That has actually been quietly changed. It's less relevant now, obviously, because no one really cares that much about the Tory party, or at least not as much as they once did. But it's now 33% of MPs to avoid constant leadership challenges. Which is interesting.
Quite high.
Yeah, I know. I know what you mean. And also, like, it's weird how little anyone cares about it, right? I remember a couple of years ago when there was a whole Liz Truss fiasco, everyone cared about the 1922
committee. I think that's why that 15% was so lodged in our head, because that was the threshold we were always thinking about.
Well, it has been that since 1998, so it is,
But they can just change the rules without really telling anyone, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's quite sort of like old chap theory, good chap theory of government, isn't it? You know what I mean? They just, you trust the 1922 committee to set reasonable rules, and that's that. So those were the two errors on that one. There were a couple of map-related errors when going over to the global channel on the Trump moving to recognize Somaliland video, but the video was successfully edited to cut out those errors, basically. So those are, is that a good thing? Did we do well there? We made the errors, but then we did fix them, which
corrected
is what,
them.
So I think, well done us, I guess. And then there was an outright error on the why China is rich, but the Chinese are poor video, where we confused the current Premier Li Qiang with the previous Premier Li Keqiang.
Unforgivable.
I know, but that's pretty bad luck that they're so similar.
Two letters extra.
So those, and then the one video, this editorial has worked quite nicely because we have the little errors on UK, little errors on global, and the one video that was quite poorly received was over on EU. And it was the Poland election results explained, which end up having a like-dislike ratio of about 86%, which is
pretty low.
It's pretty low by our standards. There was one thing that people took sort of a specific issue with, which was a claim in the video that Duda, who was the previous president, who's now been replaced, but he was from Law and Justice Party, had blocked lots of laws proposed by Donald Tusk, who's obviously the Prime Minister at the moment and comes from the other major party in Poland, Civic Coalition. That is, it's not actually wrong, but it hasn't happened as frequently as maybe we implied in the video. It's happened 5 or 6 times, I think, which isn't very often. But I think the broader issue with the video was that there was just a sense that we were too pro-Tusk or too critical of law and justice. And there's a sense that actually most of the problems in Poland's government at the moment are actually a function of coalition infighting between Tusk and his coalition partners, and more generally just sort of like pretty mediocre governing by Tusk, right? I think in retrospect, I agree, and I actually apologize. So this is an acknowledging. I think we did make a mistake then. I think we do have, I think it speaks to the fact that like within the writing team, I think we don't have real Poland expertise. I feel very comfortable writing about quite a lot of European countries. But that is definitely like a little bit of a knowledge gap in our sort of collective expertise. You think that's fair?
I think that is fair. And I think the way other or sort of English language outlets report on Poland have reports on Poland over the last few years, just absorbing that over those years, you do get the sense that it's like, law and justice sort of state capture while they're in power, and then Tusk comes in, tries to change things. And
Tusk is still the good guy, basically.
Yeah.
No, I think you're completely right. I think it does speak to this fact that there is, and I guess it sort of absolves us slightly, but there's definitely a real divide between what Poles think of, the political landscape right now and what the English language media says about it. I think you're right that the English language media generally presents it as Tusk as the savior of Polish democracy, and law and justice are unequivocally the bad guys. And maybe there's some truth to that, but I think that the point that lots of viewers were making was that actually, almost whatever you think about law and justice, it's still true that Tusk actually hasn't been a particularly effective prime minister so far. He is not popular in Poland, and he's probably not the hero that the English language press sometimes makes him out to be. Do you think that's fair?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, like you said, you can sort of you can take away the sort of moral debate of whether he's the good guy or the bad guy, but just in terms of effectiveness of governing, I think that is the bit that we sort of was a blind spot.
But yeah, so I think the takeaway here, and we actually had the previous government video we did about Polish politics was actually having a go at Tusk, and we got a lot of pushback from the other side there. So it's the what's that pretentious phrase when you get synthesis. Yes, thesis, antithesis, synthesis.
So the next one will be synthesis.
Bang in the middle.
100% like ratio. Yeah.
But I think we should just say that I think after both those videos, we're definitely aware that is a gap in our collective knowledge, and we will aspire to fix it.
Yeah.
But that is all for the errors, and I guess that takes us on to the fun bit of the podcast. Yeah.
Well, it's all been fun, but this is the
very convincing.
Yeah. I have no idea how long we've been going, so I'm just let's go through a few questions and see how we feel.
Yeah, it's up to you. I'm easy.
I have a list of questions that people have submitted in the comments, and if you want to submit some more, just keep commenting them.
Submit some to the deputy editor-in-chief.
Yeah, I'd love to answer them. If you see comments, people asking questions already, don't send the same question in, but try and come up with something original. Anyway,
real disciplinarian.
I'm going to spin the number wheel, which is very exciting for me only. No one else can see it.
That's what I imagine Jack's doing for most of these episodes.
Just spinning it, watching it while you talk. Okay, we have a number, and that number is 32. And the question is, when making TLDR's World Leader Leaderboard, how do you prevent double ups where two people choose the same candidate? We just talked about it before.
Yeah.
Okay, next question.
Honestly, sometimes I listen to this podcast and I have no idea why anyone's listening.
We do. Well, actually, maybe that demonstrates how good we are at making it seem like it's all spontaneous and it's just sort of.
Yeah, I'm surprised people have been convinced by that.
So
there was an episode a while ago where I accidentally nicked Naja's suggestion.
Yeah,
and then I had to go back on it.
So we do. That's why we do have to.
Yeah,
prepare
exactly.
In advance.
Yeah. I think that was a slip up.
Okay, I'm going to spin the wheel again. Has the switch with the TLDR Daily channel going to audio only been successful?
You're probably better placed to answer this than I am.
Yeah.
I didn't really do any daily stuff, and you do write it.
I think it has been. I mean, from an audience perspective, I guess people are missing out on seeing Ben's face or Georgina's face. But when we did it because we wanted it to sort of make the daily briefing less of a time sink for writers, to give us more time to do the sort of longer form writing. And I think it has been successful. It takes a lot less time during the day, not from the writing perspective, but actually a bit from the writing perspective, but also from Scarlett's perspective when she's editing it, because it's much quicker to just do audio only. And we still have a pretty solid viewer base for it, both on YouTube and on Spotify and other apps. Obviously is less than sort of when it was in its visual peak, but
not that much less.
Yeah, still
50% down, pretty average wise.
Reliable audience.
Yeah.
So I think it's been a success.
Yeah. I think we also sort of slightly decided that there was a bit of a ceiling on it.
Yes.
In the way there probably isn't for the other channels, right? And so that sort of eventually stymied it.
Yeah. Such a slow wheel. I'm sorry.
I have no idea why. I can't. But it's Jack set it up, isn't it?
No, I found my own wheel spin.
Your own wheel.
Question 11: Will yous ever do longer documentary style videos at any point?
Oh, wow, this is this is a recurring argument
Yeah.
in the office. I think no, broadly, because I just think we do one thing quite well, and that's sort of it. That's always been my premise. But I think it just depends on money. You know, I mean, those things are very expensive to produce, unless you just wanted a sort of like 30-minute animated TLDR style animation. And so I think, you know, if there was some massive windfall, you know, let's say if everyone watching and their family members probably bought too long, then maybe we could afford it. But until that point.
Yeah, I think it would be quite fun to do, and we'd all sort of like to do something like that. But again, it is it's a question of what pays the bills. Yeah,
and also it would require us to all, if we were going to do a fun one, it would require us to all take some time off. Although we have been asked this by various people.
Yeah.
And we do have some fun ideas. I really like the how to. So we've had to think about a couple of sort of documentary style things, and I don't know if are we even allowed to talk about this?
I don't know, but the answer is we don't have any immediate plans to do longer documentaries. Okay, next wheel spin, still going. What's your opinion on the proposed EU digital levy? This is the one that makes the thumbnail, I think.
Have you got an opinion? No opinion at all.
As in the sort of social media tax thing.
Yeah, those. I think so.
I mean, I'm sort of always in favour of sort of trying to bring those kind of companies in line. I don't know about the practicalities of it. I haven't thought about it that much, but
that's fair. I mean, that's broadly. This is such a boring answer to that question, but that is broadly my sentiment. I do think that all of those little bits of legislation that are currently floating around targeting social media companies, I do think you are seeing the tide turn against them pretty dramatically. And it's not just that. I mean, obviously there's we put a video on the porn ban, which I think is in the same ballpark. I think, you know, Australia's social media ban, that's coming in next year, I think, and it's for under 16s. A lot of policymakers have got eyes on that, but I do think you are beginning to have that pivot, that turn. I think it was sort of inevitable against social media companies. And I do think I do think Musk's acquisition of Twitter accelerated that process quite dramatically, right? I think people were a bit more relaxed about, well, politicians especially, and they fundamentally decide policy, were a bit more relaxed about social media until Musk took over, especially in Europe, right? Yeah. You know, the Germans freaked out by it. Yeah. Calling for the AFD and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I think that's interesting. I think you also see it on I have some younger siblings in school at the moment, as they should be, you know, in education. And the speed at which schools have turned against social media and tech is actually quite dramatic. The vast majority of schools in the UK now have some sort of smart ban on phones. Which is something that I mean, honestly took a couple of years. But I do think that I don't know, smoking is the obvious analogy. Everyone always reaches for that. They say are we going to look back on smartphones like smoking? You know, I don't know if it's going to be that sharp, but I can see something like that happening.
Yeah. It's an interesting one.
Surprised we squeezed that much.
Great question. I'm going to do one more, I think. Let's hopefully end on an exciting one. Question number 17, anyway. Interesting. Why do you always use Atlantic-centric maps when discussing cross-Pacific relationships? I'm not sure that we do.
God, some of the questions are that's a bit much.
I mean, in terms of thumbnails, if we're doing a US-China video, it's going to be centered on the Pacific, right? I'm pretty sure
they must be thinking of a specific case where that happened. This is not editorial practice. I mean, you can clearly see from our reaction, this is not a conscious decision. I think people sometimes just overestimate how much thought goes into the videos. It's probably just whatever map comes up first on the sort of animation element doc thing.
Yeah, well,
that's that.
That was our last question. Ended on a high. There's lots of very exciting questions that I'm sure we'll come to in other episodes, in future episodes. But keep asking.
We could. I think this could be a bit of a thing though, where you get because I think sometimes this could be a thing. I think sometimes when you have with those questions sort of split into two, right? There's questions about Nebula, the business, what do you do in your day or whatever, which Jack is very well placed to answer. But then there are some more political questions on there that I think is quite it's quite nice to maybe drag a right or two up from downstairs. Because they're context that I live up here and they all just in the basement.
He just summons us.
But I think that could work well.
Yeah.
It's better because otherwise I just sit, Jack asks a question and then just fiddles with the wheel apparently.
Yeah.
And that's it.
I do like that people don't just ask what do you do at work kind of stuff. You do have they want our opinions on things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although
But yeah, you got to be careful.
Yeah, gotta be careful.
Yeah.
All right. Nice. On that note.
On that note, be careful. Thanks for watching, and comment some more questions down below and let us know if we missed anything, if you agree, disagree with our acknowledging in today's episode.